Hi, I'm Todd Jones, host of the podcast Press Box Access. Here's a clip from my interview with Dan Wetzel. Dan tells us about Sonny Vaccaro, the shoe executive who signed Michael Jordan to Nike. Who was one of the first people that you met that you thought to yourself, now this guy's misunderstood?
I don't always know if they're misunderstood. Or maybe misunderstood wouldn't be quite the word, because they might be properly understood. It's just the miscast is a little bit. Maybe the priorities are all wrong. I mean, I became, and still am, very close with Sonny Vaccaro. And if you read stories about Sonny Vaccaro in the 90s or the early 90s or the 80s, there was a generation of sports writer that you would have thought Sonny Vaccaro, the sneaker executive, was, was Satan, because he was the NCAA didn't like Sonny Vaccaro. He was a threat to their model. And this is where you're getting the coverage top down. You get commissioners would bash guys like him. And
Sonny Vaccaro set the table. He's the guy that signed Michael Jordan.
Signed Michael Jordan to Nike, signed Kobe Bryant to Adidas, which might have been even a bigger gamble. He was a proponent of everything you see now. And he was also just this, but he was an Italian guy, just didn't fit. He's from Pittsburgh. Who is this guy? And he would always say, stop taking my money if you hate me so much. I mean, he's just and he was always pro-athlete. And he'd say, well, why should, I'm paying this coach $1 million a year to make a grown man wear a certain sneaker. And that kid can't get a ham sandwich. Right. It was absurd. Everything he said was, he'd point out, but at the time there was a massive media effort to protect the NCAA. And so if and the words that would get used to describe sleazy and grime, I mean, they were very, it's like, yeesh. And the more you got to know Sonny and you knew how much he cared about people, and the more stories you heard about, I remember a guy, he got picked second in the draft, and there was a story, I remember, it was a little after this, but the NBA was expecting this guy to come out, and he didn't come out, and somebody called the kid. This was like one of these street agents, supposedly, pulling kids out of college to go to the pros, God forbid. And he said, why are you not putting your name in the draft? He says, my coach went through, he said he talked to the NBA. He said I wouldn't be a pick till late in the second round. I said, son, you're going top 3. And everybody knows it. So he came out, got picked second, and played in the NBA for 15 years or something. But, you start seeing those kind of stories from a different perspective. And you go, this guy is freaking lying his ass off on this kid and his family. And anything bad happens, only one good thing can happen here. And it didn't making the Sweet 16 next year for Old State U. And, and you start really seeing it all through the thing and the hypocrisy of it all and how crazy it is now. And you got to remember, this stuff was, this was non-negotiable stuff. You can't have a player make money. Who are these? They were mad when kids would leave it after their junior year. Right? You got to show commitment. All the different.
Right. It wasn't that long ago.
No.
25 years.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so, a guy like that, you start to really get to know, and you're like, well, how's he hurting him? And there's a lot of them. The financial planners or the AAU coaches, they're all terrible people, every one of them. And they're horrible. Well, one thing is most of them were from the city. Most of them are African American. So it's like you can't coach your own kids. They were all terrible. And some of them were. There's no question. Some of them did some things. But I used to say, you take let's say we're into boxing, okay? You're down in Columbus, right? So you'd say you start a boxing program in Columbus. And through the years, you send, every other year you get a guy to go pro, and he turns out pretty good. And you've developed this thing and taken the youth of Columbus, and you got 100 kids in there boxing. They're staying off the streets. They're learning, whatever they're doing, getting exercise. And every 2 years, one goes on to be successful. And let's say of those guys that get successful, some of them keep you on to be their their manager, the corner man. You make some money off of that and all that. The city of Columbus and the state of Ohio would build a freaking statue for you in Columbus for helping out the youth of Columbus and being this pillar of the community and launching all these great careers. And because college sports is involved, if you didn't send your kids to Ohio State, you're a scumbag. Because you said, you know what? This kid is going to go to Michigan State. Or this kid's going to just go pro. Or this kid, maybe it'd be better if he goes and plays. He's kind of got a family life. It's a little dicey, and it's not great for him to stick around. He needs to go out west, right? And none of those things are ever considered by the college fan or all that. And so all of a sudden you're a scumbag. And you make a little bit of money, and you go, well, why is that? It's because we have this whole system set up that there's a rooting interest. Where if it was a different sport or you're the piano teacher and all your kids are getting to, becoming concert pianists and all this, you'd be a hero. So what's the difference? And, so a lot of it was learning that perspective on try to look at stories in a different manner.